Welcome to the Hop Edition podcast, brought to you in association with the Malt Miller, your go-to choice for premium homebrewing ingredients and equipment. Whether you're a beginner starting out or an experienced brewer, the Malt Miller has got you covered. So for top quality products and customer service, jump over to themaltmiller.co.uk and tell them the Hop Edition sent you. We would also like to thank all our Patreons for their continued support with running and developing the pod. If you would like to become a member and gain access to exclusive perks and benefits, head over to patreon.com/the Hop Edition. Now it's time to get this pod started, so crack open a homebrew and enjoy the episode. Good evening and welcome back to the Hop Edition, the UK's most prominent and longest running homebrew podcast. As always, we're here to talk about the art, the science and the beauty of homebrewing, but today specifically we're going to be dipping our toes back into the murky topic of water chemistry, but this time we're taking the angle of regional water profiles. So we're going to have a look at their historical impact on beer styles and brewing processes in specific locations, what that can teach us about water chemistry more generally and how it affects beer and the types of styles that you might want to brew, or how to shape water chemistry to different styles. We're also going to try and answer the question of whether or not trying to actually emulate specific water profiles is a worthwhile endeavor to begin with, or whether it's more, of a sort of useful source of information from a historical perspective. So anyway, let's dive in to the water history of Pilsen, Burton, Dublin and more, and sink a few beers while we're at it. But just before we get into that, as always, a huge thank you to our partner sponsor, the Malt Miller, your premier supplier of all things homebrew. So for all of your homebrewing needs, go and check them out at themaltmiller.co.uk. While you're there, don't forget to hit up the dedicated Hop Edition recipe section. You can find a range of beers that have been featured on the podcast, including our own recipe creations, but also some great recipes from our guests, including quite a few sort of clone recipes for various commercial beers and so on. At the moment, you might have seen that the Malt Miller have now started offering hops in a range of sizes across a range of packaging sizes across their full range. So you can now buy all of their hops either in 100, 250, 500 gram or 1 kilogram packages. So if you want to annoy the other half by filling up the freezer with even more hops, you can now buy full kilo bags of everything on there, which is great, but yeah, might be a problem for some of us who are a little bit addicted to bulk buying stuff. So
yeah, but I think the 250 and the 500 grams probably a safer bet, to be fair.
I like those
I like
mid-range weights nowadays,
because you can easily, you still get that bulk buying discount, but then you can still work through it within the year of brewing.
That's it. For me, it was always the mistake of going, I'll buy a kilo of like some kind of bittering hop, and then 5 years later,
Magnum.
I'm down to, well, I think Columbus was probably the one that I got, which, to be fair, you can use that obviously at later stages as well, but it's never really going to be one where you're going in with like, 200, 300 grams in a brew. Yeah. So I think I've got it down. The bag's probably about 4 or 5 years old now, and I'm probably down to about 750 grams or something. I think that one's just going to have to get binned because it's not at its freshest at the minute.
Yeah, exactly. I did Magnum. I think I got was it a 225 or 250, something like that. Magnum, and like it's lasted forever because it's like, would you put a Magnum? It's like 10 grams a go.
Well, exactly.
Normally it's just.
Unless you're doing some sort of like old school IPO with crazy IBUs, you're just never going to have a massive like dish, especially now when you've got quite high alphas on it as well. So if you're like, 15% alpha, you just don't need that much ever, really. But anyway, we're already going down a rabbit hole here. in
Why
a
not?
topic which is potentially
Oh
filled
yeah.
with rabbit holes. So, but let's talk about what we're drinking first of all. So, what have you got in your glass, Andy?
I've got I've started early already. I thought I'll just get just a wee beer just to invigorate me for the pod and get me going. Long day, but it's feeling good now. So it's my Mertzen that I did. I think we've talked about it in previous when we had the smoked lagers. There's a
Oh,
wee
the
bit of smoked malt,
slightly smoky one. Yeah,
slightly
yeah, nice.
smoked, but I think it's just more to the flavour sort of thing. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
still going, thankfully.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that was a
But
lovely
yeah,
beer. To be fair.
yeah, it's nice.
Cool, cool.
What about you?
I've got a
Ooh.
lemon grisette,
Oh
and
wow.
it's in a
Yeah.
Brewpoint Beer and Beyond glass because it's actually going to be on tap at the Beer and Beyond Festival in a couple of weeks. So May Day bank holiday. It's going to be on tap there because brewed put this one into our little homebrew club competition, and this and
You won
another
again.
beer in New Zealand. Well, I didn't come first; it came second, but they said they were going to do two beers, so
All right.
I was lucky to get this one through
Plus
as well.
you're a
For
master
brewing.
now anyway at that brew kit.
It's the
I'm
third
sure.
time that I've brewed with it. It's got its own nuances, shall we say? So it's quite a weird setup to work with, to be honest. So
Yeah.
there's always something that kind of catches you out a little bit with it. But
Does that thing spin the mash and all that? It like
yeah, so the
proper.
mash it's it's like a two vessel system, but the main like mash tun is also the kettle, so it's like an integrated kettle mash tun thing, and then
Right.
the other vessel is just like a lauter tun, but it's pumps to that, so it will literally pump the full mash out from the kettle into the lauter tun, and then lauters back in to the
So
kettle.
weird, isn't it?
So it's a very odd, like I've never really seen a sort of setup like that. But yeah, you've got like an agitator bar that basically spins in there while you're mashing. So it's really efficient. It's like a super efficient pilot system. They can get like 90+% efficiency off of it.
Efficiency.
And it's only about 100. It's I think maxed out. It's like 140 litre volume or something like that. But you tend to get at most kind of 120 litres. So they'll do five or
It's
six
the same size as
kegs from it.
Bagley's brewing on.
Yeah,
So
roughly
usually
the
25.
same sort
Yeah.
of size of that. So yeah, it's always sort of fun to go and use that and whatever, but it's just a bit of an odd one to convert recipes up to it and all the rest of it.
How
So
it's
we'll
gonna
see
turn
what what their one comes up. But anyway, the beer itself is basically the sort of grisette recipe that I've done before with lemon zest, the juice from the lemons as well, and some pepper. So it's actually a kind of lemon and black pepper grisette,
Did you
and I
have
threw
to
a
grate?
bit of cornet. Yeah, there was a lot of there was a lot of
For that
grating
big
of
batch.
yeah. Well, I didn't actually do it. Elliot, who was helping me out, who works there but is also a member of the homebrew club, was helping me out, and he's a former professional chef. He used to own a restaurant and all that sort of stuff as well. So he was like, "Yeah, I'm doing this because I can like zest the lemon in like 10 seconds. I've just watched you try to do it and like grate half your fingers off in the process." So luckily he helped out with that, and obviously I dug out the mash tun as punishment for that. So as you have to do when you go and do a brew day with people.
Just get the big. I take it it's just like one of the scoops. Is it just one of the big plastic scoops that you use to dig it out?
Yeah, because it's it's not
It's
not big enough to have a hatch on it or anything like that. So you
No.
literally just get on the little stool and scoop it out
And
the
just
top
dig
and
it
throw
out,
it into the old
a
mash
bucket.
bag. So yeah, it's not
Mash
too
bag.
too
Right,
difficult
okay.
to be fair. So yeah, so anyway, if anyone's in the locale and wants to come and check out a couple of beers from the Bedford Home Brew Club, they'll be on. The other one was a New Zealand Pilsner, by the way,
Nice.
brewed by my friend Matt. So yeah, go and check that out. May Day bank holiday weekend. It's really good festival actually. Anyways, they get a load of beers from obviously lots of breweries around the UK in as well, and have a big marquee out the back. So it's a cool venue. Brett and Graham came to it a couple of years ago, and I think they had good fun. So
Good.
yeah. Anyway, shall we get stuck into some water chemistry?
Why don't we?
Yeah.
Cool.
So we all know, like beer's primary ingredient is in fact water. And we've talked at length about water chemistry in the past.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there's an epic episode from very early on in the podcast where we did several hours on water chemistry, which you're welcome to go back and listen to. So we don't want to fully rehash all of that information, but just to give a little bit of context, we will just do a quick recap in terms of, because we're talking specifically about water profiles. Obviously, the main thing we're talking about in relation to that is the kind of minerals that you'll find in water when you look at a water report, and certainly in terms of like the water profile that we're interested in when we're brewing. So water chemistry, in essence, can alter various things in terms of the beer that you're tasting. So the flavor balance itself, whether it is leaning more towards the malt or the hoppiness. And we're talking about sort of emphasizing things here rather than, the water chemistry isn't going to be the main thing that drives that. Obviously, if it's a malt forward beer, it's always going to be malt forward. If it's a hop forward beer, it's always going to be hop forward. But the water chemistry can kind of add a little bit of, sort of like polish to that, or a little bit of emphasis to it. So we're not saying it's the main driving force behind that. But anyway, it can affect your mouthfeel. That can definitely be affected quite significantly by choices in terms of, things like balance between certain minerals, and also perhaps things like sodium being added and so on. It can have an impact on your mash efficiency, certainly if it's also affecting your pH significantly. And it's also quite important for yeast health as well. So that's some of the things that can be impacted by it. And we can then break that down into the minerals themselves. So I'll let Andy jump in here and talk us through some of the key kind of minerals that we need to know about when we're looking at water profiles.
So the first main one's probably calcium, which can lower your mash pH. It can improve enzyme activity. It also helps clarify in yeast flocculation as well. And it's usually added via gypsum or calcium chloride. So yeah, it's kind of, I would say it's the kind of, it's probably one of the main things actually you want to try and hit. I suppose it's good for yeast health as well, basically. So
generally beneficial to have a decent level of calcium 50, in there, pretty 50 much
and
whatever
above sort of thing.
And that's kind of generally the sort of minimum most people talk about. Although obviously you can have examples where it's lower than that.
Yeah. Next one's magnesium. It's good for yeast nutrients, just in small amounts though. Too much magnesium, you can get a bitter kind of harsh taste, and it's usually added via Epsom salts. Although it can also increase, was it the sulfate as well?
Yeah, so people don't generally magnesium tend to be adding Epsom salts for the purpose of increasing magnesium, but that's usually more just an indirect way of sort of upping the sulfate without increasing calcium at the same time. So in most of these cases where we're talking about the minerals you're adding to it, obviously those are like a molecule or compound which includes more than one of these elements. So obviously your Epsom salts is magnesium sulfate, so we're actually adding sulfate and magnesium at the same time. But
it's magnesium sulfate. But what would you normally? It's like 5 to 10 ppm normally. Is a good place to be, and sort of thing.
A lot of the information that you read out there sort of says that you're probably going to have enough magnesium anyway by default from the grain.
The grains.
Even if, I mean, for me, I will quite often using RO water not even bother adding any magnesium at all. So, and it doesn't seem to cause any particular problems in that sense.
Okay, cool.
But obviously still useful for pumping up your sulfate if you want to.
Yeah. Next one, sodium. So that can enhance perceived body and mouthfeel. It can soften bitterness, which was one that we talked a lot about when we were doing the kind of low ABV stuff. So when the hops were over, kind of taking over the bitterness, even when you're trying to put small amounts, you could add sodium chloride, basically salt, and that would help soften the bitterness. Like food, it can be treated like a flavour enhancer, but only in small quantities. I think I'm trying to think what the magic number was. Maybe about 5 grams of salt you could go per 5 gallon batch was a kind of good place to be if you want to soften bitterness.
Yeah, that sounds about all right. And I think in terms of ppm as well, there's a number where it's like go above that, and it is starting to get kind of like noticeably salty rather than. Can't remember exactly what it was now, but it's yeah, probably if you're going above 100, 150 maybe, then you might start to be perceiving it more as an actual saltiness.
It comes across.
Yeah.
As I says, it's added by salt, so standard salt. But just watch, don't just use any salt because that's got the anti-caking agent in it, hasn't it?
Yeah.
You want to use what do they call it? It's like rock salt or something. You can
so I think in America it's quite often called like kosher salt, isn't it?
Kosher salt, yeah.
But that's basically just salt without any additives in it. Yeah. So like most of the time, if it's kind of chunky rock salt or sea salt or whatever, then that's usually
it's just
going to be okay.
Chloride.
I've never actually found out what the issue is with the anti-caking agent in terms of what it would. If it would cause any problems as such, but obviously it's probably
bad for yeast.
Probably better not to have it in there. Obviously, if you if you don't need it. So
cool.
But yeah, and again, similar to the magnesium sulfate, obviously because it's sodium chloride, you can sometimes be adding that salt to bump up your chloride as a sort of side effect rather than increasing it with calcium chloride. But yeah.
Yeah, so they're all interconnected. It's not so quite easy.
Yeah, exactly.
There's some trade-offs need to be done, but that's why you use all different salts to then maybe try and get it to where you need it to be.
Yep.
Okay. Next one was bicarbonate, so that's HCO3. It's normally so that buffers acidity. This is the main mineral that's affecting pH as a result. So if you're doing darker beers, then you probably want some bicarbonate in so your pH doesn't go too low.
Yep.
So, it's high levels is quite problematic as well in pale beers. So, just watch. And also, it's known as temporary hardness, but it can be neutralized with acids. So, if you are doing pale beers, then you can add. You could either do an acid rest, I suppose, with your mash, or you could use malts that are
acidulated malts,
or you could use lactic acid, which is what I do. And it's the way to add bicarbonate in is using sodium bicarbonate. So again, there's another trade-off where you're going to be increasing your sodium when you do add it. So just be careful. Next one is sulfates. So these starting to come into what we normally do, a sulfate chloride ratio, but sulfates basically accentuates hop bitterness and dryness, and that's added via gypsum or Epsom salts. And the other one, it's yin and yang, is the chloride, which enhances fullness and malt sweetness, and it can be added via calcium chloride or sodium chloride, which is what we talked about earlier with the salt, standard table salt. And just talking about, so the sulfate to chloride is like your magic ratio if you want to go for the hops versus malt, which is like a toggle switch. And you can go with your different ratios. So you can have 4-to-1 bitter for sulfate chloride, or you can go malty, which may be a 1-to-3 to the towards the chloride being higher. But so
so that's kind of the building blocks of your water profiles that we'll be talking about more of. But obviously we're kind of hinting towards adjusting those yourself, obviously in terms of talking about the actual compounds and minerals that you'd be adding in order to control those numbers. Now Andy's blessed with lovely soft Scottish water up where he is.
At the top. You just
myself not so much.
Yeah.
But what out of those sort of compounds, which ones do you sort of have as your, main kind of toolkit in terms of water adjustments? Have you Do you have sort of all of those things that we've mentioned there, or is there just a few that you tend to need?
So the latest one that I've started to use was the sodium bicarbonate. So bicarbonate of soda.
Yep.
It normally lives in the house because the missus
It's
uses
in the
that
baking
normally for the
section.
baking.
Yeah.
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 But I have used it for, I think it went into
Yeah.
the,
Because you'd need that for the darker beers, wouldn't you? Really, to
yeah,
buffer the acidity from the malts and whatnot.
exactly. Because it can, if you've done dark beers with just like kind of soft water, it goes really far down. And sometimes
Hmm.
you don't even need to add any
Yeah.
acids, which is cool. But yeah, it's, I think you do, yeah, need it. And then
Yeah.
everything else, like we're saying, obviously I've got a box full of just standard rock salt over there.
Hmm.
I've got gypsum, calcium chloride, I've got Epsom salts, and yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably, it's quite
Yeah.
quite a few
I,
salts over there.
pretty much the same. I think I tend to use just gypsum and calcium chloride quite a lot. Just those two. Quite often I'll build a water profile just out of those two together. But sometimes if I'm trying to push the sulfate, the Epsom salts comes in quite useful. And yeah, sodium again if I'm trying to push the chloride. So particularly for big hazy beers or sometimes dark beers where I want a really kind of chewy
Which is salt.
mouthfeel and a lot of body to it, can be quite useful for that as well. So yeah, but anyway, so we wanted to cover those off just to make sure that we kind of had
Yeah.
the context for what the different minerals are that we're talking about. Um, and before we jump into the actual water profiles for specific reasons, we wanted to quickly touch on what's the actual reason for kind of like different places having their own unique water profiles. And essentially, this is all about the geology of those
Hmm.
regions because all brewing water is going to start out as rain and that's going to be filtered through soil and rock, and as it goes through those it's going to be dissolving minerals that are in that local geology. So that journey of the water from falling on the ground to reaching reservoirs and
Wells.
um, going into wells or wherever it's being sourced from is going to determine the hardness of the water, alkalinity, ion balance, and essentially the kind of mineral profile of it. So uh, that's that's what's going on. Essentially, it's about the water kind of passing through that local geology and picking up minerals. So you could almost frame that as it's liquid geology in a sense.
Yeah,
Different
that's
types of
serious.
rock, the different types of rock are going to give you different water profiles. So um, this is quite relevant to my sort of local region,
Yeah.
and also generally the sort of southeastern London area. There's a lot of limestone and chalk, quite a lot of sort of low-lying sedimentary kind of rock areas around, slow-moving rivers and so on and so forth. So carbonate-based rock essentially is going to be rich in calcium carbonate, and you're going to get a lot of that high bicarbonate or alkaline water from that, which is going to tend to push your brewing water or your wort towards the higher end pH wise, unless you're adding acid to it. So London, the southeast, quite a lot of that area is very alkaline, and as we're going to talk about a little bit more later, also Dublin, which as I said, we're going to get into this in a bit, but it kind of indicates why those places, certainly in historical times, were synonymous with your darker beers. So Andy, do you want to cover off the more sulfate
So you've got
lead
what
deposits?
the sulfate, the gypsum kind of areas, like where you've got the calcium sulfate dissolving into water. So basically, that's producing like high sulfate levels, and that traditionally has been like, I think everyone we talk about is the Burton upon Trent.
Yeah.
So it's like the Burton snatch or whatever you get, which is naturally high in gypsum content as well. So yeah, was it granite and it did in Igneous, what's that? How do you pronounce it?
Igneous.
Igneous
Igneous.
rocks.
Volcanic is probably the
Yeah,
easier way
but
to say
okay, yeah.
that.
Which has got very low solubility, produces soft water. Oh no, wait. So this is the next bit we've got is granite and ingot. Oh, so
Yeah.
that's like for pilsing and stuff like that as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
that'll give you your soft water.
And also you're kind of, I guess, more mountainous areas as well, where it's sort of solid rock and yeah,
Hmm.
not picking up as many minerals as it goes through it.
Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? So,
Yeah.
or like in Scotland, we've got lochs, so
Yeah. Yeah.
yep, they
So
pull your water from the loch, so
yeah.
you're not pulling anything too much from that, or it's like it is a lot of granite up in Scotland as well. So yeah, it
Yeah.
makes sense.
So that's another factor actually, which is mentioned there. It's also sort of how the water is getting to that final destination as well. So um the depth of kind of ground that it passes through, the speed that it moves across it or through it,
Hmm.
and also the amount of time that it spends there will affect the amount that it's picking up. So, um, yeah, if it's a very sort of deep water source that's passing through lots and lots of sedimentary rock to get there, and
Yep.
taking many years to do so, you're probably going to end up with pretty hard water as a result. Water that's passing over very hard volcanic rocks quite quickly and maybe ending up in a lock like your example there,
Yeah.
Andy, is not going to
Loch
have
Castle.
time to pick up as much stuff on the way and is probably going to be quite soft as a result. So yeah, I think it's quite interesting in terms of
Yeah, how it
what's
picks up those minerals
affecting
through
that. But
the ground.
yeah, it,
Yeah.
it explains, most of us can kind of look at our local environment and sort of go, oh, that's actually the reason why my water absolutely ruins all my household appliances because it's taken years to pass
It's
through
all
all of this limestone.
the limestone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
and it
it's
just
just,
ends up in your kettle.
yeah, it's just all, yeah, hard as nails and full of bicarbonate, basically. So,
See, here's a question for you then. See, when you first started brewing, did you notice that you did get a lot of lime scale on your brewing kit? And as you've switched to RO, is that then you don't have that issue as much now?
yes, I mean, it's not,
Or is it
it's generally kind of like the residue from brewing was much more
brewing? Yeah, the
significant.
beer stone.
Beer stone and so on. I mean, I think that was not necessarily because of the hardness of the water, but generally the water would. I don't want to say the word scum, but you'd see
Yeah,
like
you
stuff
might
sort
see
of
it in
on
your
the top of it.
HLT. Maybe your
Like through the
HLT,
boil and stuff, it
possibly.
would have sort of weird kind of um stuff forming
Really?
on the top of the water as well. So it was noticeable, like to that
Wow.
point in terms of it being. It's the same as like just brewing a cup of tea, to be honest. Like with the
Uh
hard
huh.
water, you'll see like a kind of weird, kind of filmy sort of residue on
But
the
you
top
you're
of
not
it.
used to that drinking that, so then you actually prefer it, or do you
Um,
if you were to come up to Scotland and have like some tap water out of Scotland, would you go, oh, that's much better, or would you go, no, I prefer my chalky stuff, thanks very much.
Probably as far as drinking water, I think you'd probably prefer the cleaner, sort of softer stuff, and
Right, okay.
it's definitely better for making like tea and things like that. You do
Uh
notice
huh.
the difference. Like you can brew tea with like RO water and go, oh wow, that's actually
Have
tastes
you
like
done that?
much nicer. Yeah, it's one of those where you sort of you try it and you go, oh, I'm going to do that all the time, and then you're just like, oh, I can't actually be fucked to like go and get
Hmm.
RO water every time I want to boil the kettle. But um, it's actually like quite beneficial if you've got like expensive coffee machines and stuff like that to run them with RO water because they're not going to get furred up with all the lime scale, so it will actually extend the life of stuff like that if you are doing such things.
We've got a good comment in the chat, and someone says Dublin is a funny one for water because there is two profiles. There's the hard water that's like London, but also in
Yeah,
South Dublin, where he lives, it's Pils and Soft. If you
that's
look
really
in
interesting.
Brewfar, it
I'd
does.
never knew that.
Yeah, because if you look, it's like the what do you call it, the brewery for Guinness. I think they've
Mm,
got a well that gives them a softer water.
yeah,
If you look in the profile, so they can obviously work their magic with that one
yeah,
and
yeah.
maybe between the two.
Well,
So yeah.
that's sort of hinting at something that later on that we'll get onto, which is how accurate are sort of profiles for specific locations and so on. But
Sure.
Yeah, thanks for that info, Road Brewery. That's really interesting, actually. To have that much of a difference between
I wonder if
placing
that's the
such.
Low Road Brewery and this is the High Road.
Yeah.
Or is it
um,
across the road?
so yeah, that takes us nicely into actually talking about the profiles for different areas a little bit. And we are going to start off with the British Isles. So we've got kind of like three. Well,
Yeah.
there's three kind of main examples that we want to talk about. And although there's actually kind of four places on our list here, but there's kind of three sort of water profile types that we're going to talk about
Mm-hmm.
anyway. And probably the most famous one in terms of like English brewing would be the Burton water profile. Andy's already touched on that when we were talking about
Yeah.
high gypsum water and uh, like the actual soil and earth being quite high in gypsum, that can produce a high sulfate brewing water. In Burton, it's kind of like the extreme of that, where you end
Very.
up with
Yeah.
um, super high sulfate. And again, we'll talk more about this, but there's you see a lot of variation in terms of what people say are the authentic or original kind of water profiles. But what sort of numbers do you see normally for Burton brewing water, Andy, in terms of sulfate? It's usually sort of up,
It's
well beyond
like
sort of 500 ppm of sulfate,
it's
or
yeah. I mean, even when I was looking in, it was talking like 800 as well. Like
yeah.
it can be really, really high. If you actually, I think we were talking about this in the planning. If you've been brave enough to go up to that sort of levels with your brewing.
This is a good question for the chat, actually. Has anyone done a full-on Burton water profile where you've been pushing the numbers up beyond kind of 500 ppm?
Yeah,
Because
way
I
up.
haven't. I've never been brave enough to do that.
No, never.
To
I'm
be
just
honest,
like,
if I've done sort of super hoppy beers where I've gone up to 250, sort of probably about 300, I think is the most that I've ever done. And I felt like, yeah, that's like so dry and like bitter and gnarly that
mhm.
I don't think I really would want to go much beyond that. But um, I've just brought up the brewing water spreadsheet that I've still got on my computer from ages ago. I don't really tend to use it much these days.
Mhm.
Um, but anyway, on that, the Burton water profile is 275 calcium, so it's super high in calcium as
Oh,
well. But that
wow,
makes
yeah.
sense because obviously, if your sulfate is coming from gypsum, then you're also getting
Uh-huh.
calcium from it at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Pretty high in magnesium. It's pretty high in everything, to be honest. But
Yes.
well, actually, apart from chloride, but the magnesium is at 40, sodium 25, sulfate 610, chloride at 35. So you've got
Yeah,
what is that,
super
like
low
a
chloride.
40-1 sulfate to chloride ratio or something?
Quite high
No,
bicarb as
20 to
well.
1. Sorry, and bicarbonate at 270. So yeah,
Yeah.
pretty very hard water, but especially so in terms of sulfate, which is quite unusual to see that.
I
So
wonder
anyway,
if
yeah,
they have to add, I wonder if they have to add a lot of acid to get because that bicarb to get into the right pH.
yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I think the sulfate has a bit of a acidifying effect itself, so that
Right.
might slightly
Help.
counteract it. But I think that you
Yeah.
would probably still need to be acidifying it to get the pH certainly into the region that we would normally
Yeah, the 5.4,
like it to be.
5.2.
So yeah, so briefly, what's the relevance of that sulfate level in terms of Burton Brewing, Andy, as you understand it?
What, the button snatch? The
Yeah.
kind of like how you get that sulfur. It's like it's part of the aroma on those beers, isn't it? Those kind of button IPAs where you get that sort of mineral sulfur smell off the actual beer, which kind of like yeah, it's part of it, and it plays to the hops as well, so it provides that sort of yeah, really enhances hops, and yeah, suppose that's how they found out it was a good area to brew sort of
Yeah.
hoppy beers, and it worked, and it sold
So
really well.
always been associated with the sort of IPAs and British pale ales and that sort of thing, right?
Yep, definite. Yeah, pale hoppy beers, which is who's out of Burton on Trent? What the kind of traditional breweries is it? Try to think. Is it?
That's a good question. You've caught me on the hop there. I mean, is Bass?
Yeah, probably.
I think.
Bass. Yeah.
Is that the main one?
What? Baggers has got some further information. Burton has two profiles as well. As the pollution increased in the Industrial Revolution, they dug deeper wells. This tapped into another strata, and therefore deep well Burton water is different.
That's interesting.
Blaminic.
Has he said different in what way?
Didn't say.
Because that, going back to what we were talking about before, you would think if it was a deeper well, potentially it would be even more rich in minerals because it's passing through more rock to get there. But don't know. Yeah, let us know what.
Unless the geology changes and then it goes.
Into or you go into
it's pulling from
a underwater stream or something that gets the water quicker. Perhaps.
Yeah.
Don't know. Interesting.
It can can change.
So yeah. When we're talking about the Burton water, we kind of also need to talk about kind of London water at the same time, don't we? And as we've already said, sort of London and the southeast tends to have this very high bicarbonate water because of the local geology. Lots of limestone, lots of chalk. So even water running off the the hills and stuff in the southeast is going through a lot of kind of chalk and things like that. So it's picking up lots of bicarbonate. On the way.
Doesn't have anywhere near the ppms on the calcium, the sulfate, or the chlorides sort of thing, is it? But it does have that bicarbonate in it, which is quite high.
Exactly. So that is certainly historically speaking has meant the London water has been better or more successful for brewing darker beers. And again, I think we need to just sort of briefly say, obviously, like, it's not exclusively been led by the water. Everyone was brewing dark beers at one point because they didn't have any other choice, because all the malt was, sort of quite highly coloured, prior to developing pale malting techniques and much lighter malts and all the rest of it. Kind of everyone was doing that. A lot of beers would have been smoky in nature as well before they developed modern kilning techniques and so on and so forth. So essentially, everyone was kind of starting off, I think, with beers that would probably be leaning towards your darker styles anyway. But once we get to the point where you could start to develop different styles, then the success of brewing different beers was partly limited or enhanced, perhaps, by the brewing water that you would have access to. So in London, porters and what would then become known as stout were the beers that worked best because the water there, those darker malts will acidify your brewing wort, and if you've got higher bicarbonate, that will buffer that acidity and stop your pH from dropping too low.
Yeah, exactly. Or you need it. That's why you've got the darker malts to get your pH correct as well.
Yeah, exactly. So
milds as well would fall into that, would it, Tricky?
I think so. So where you've got doesn't have to be fully your sort of darker beers and stuff, but milds or amber ales and so on.
Yeah.
And then when we're talking about Burton, obviously you've got the sulfate there, which then starts to emphasize the hops, and they find that actually we can make sort of IPAs and stuff with a really sort of snappy hop profile and bitterness that's going to work quite well there. So you can see, that's how different areas then start to lean into certain styles, because
traditionally
their water is basically giving them a bit of an edge, or you could say they're being sort of shoehorned into a certain style because their brewing water is the only thing that's the only style they can make successfully with it.
Yeah, exactly. And without recent developments of RO, or I suppose, did breweries not then have to then treat their water as well? So that's where you get what's the stuff you can get, the brewery stuff, where it does a whole load of different things, the salts.
Like DWB salt,
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah. So that would then, that's how they would maybe tweak it slightly. But I think that's more of a newer thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Instead of historical.
So what about Scottish water, Andy? Tell us a bit about Scottish water.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So Edinburgh, where the wee heavy, I think, kind of came about, kind of contrasts this with Burton. And Edinburgh's kind of got just enough alkalinity for malt complexity, but kind of lacks that hot punch, the sulfate that we were talking about earlier, which is kind of benefited. That's why you get these kind of rich but silky Scottish ales. Which is interesting. It was a bit of a kind of eye opener for me. Like, that's how your water for those kind of areas kind of came about, because there is a fair bit of bicarbonate in Edinburgh water, but the kind of your ppms on your sulfate and your chloride, they're probably actually, if I look at Edinburgh water, it's kind of what I tend to target now for my brewing,
Right.
but maybe not with the bicarb. So like Edinburgh water profile could be like 140 ppm sulfate to 60 chloride.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the wheelhouse that I'm talking when I'm doing maybe my pales or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good general purpose sort of pale ale brewing water, isn't it?
Yeah. And the calcium's at 125 ppm as well. So it's actually quite good brewing water. The only thing is it's got quite a bit of bicarb in it. So I think that's why, to try and bring that back to work with the bicarb, they had the kind of slightly kind of more malt complexity, just to help with that and give that kind of nice balance, I suppose.
Cool. We also see some other kind of regional variations, obviously in UK water. So quite a lot of Yorkshire breweries would be taking water off of the Pennines. Again, probably more likely to be sort of running over sort of harder rock, more sort of granite and things like that in those areas. And certainly, and again, it's not to say that everywhere in Yorkshire has super soft water or whatever. There's still going to be sort of regional variations within those areas, but you do see some of the kind of differences maybe between, I guess, sort of like a northern bitter versus a southern bitter are perhaps slightly shaped by water as well, where perhaps maybe the softer water makes for a slightly smoother or creamier perhaps kind of pint that you could characterize as a sort of northern, and obviously there's other things that factor into that as well. A massive one would be like the use of sparklers and stuff like that as well. So presentation of the beer is always a big factor as well, but I think there's something a little bit more behind that as well in terms of the presentation of the beer, kind of flavor profile wise, that perhaps the water can be a factor in that as well. Maybe, don't know. That's open to debate, isn't it? I think a little bit.
Yeah, I seen we've got down that also the water then led to the kind of the Yorkshire Square fermenters, which I think from what we've tasted, like when Baggers has sent us beers from the Yorkshire, where these open fermentations, it definitely softens, and you don't have that massive bite either. So the water complements that sort of output you're trying to get with your kind of ales from those areas as well.
Yeah. And we can't obviously talk about kind of the British Isles without talking about stout in Dublin.
Yep.
And again, very, heavy sort of bicarbonate, more so than London, according to the brewing profiles that you see within, software and various other places. So I'll just actually, for comparison, I'll just have a look at the difference between sort of London and Dublin in terms of sort of bicarbonate levels. So on brewing water, London is given as 166 bicarbonate, relatively low levels of sulfate and chloride, both around 40 and 70 calcium. So yeah, fairly high in bicarbonate. I mean, my local water is quite a bit harder than that. It's more up towards 200-ish on the bicarbonate, and quite a bit more of the other minerals as well. But it's still obviously enough there to kind of favour sort of darker beers, I would say. And then Dublin comes up as 315. Now, we've already heard somebody in the chat saying there's actually sort of two versions of Dublin water. So presumably this is the harder of the two, which would be bicarbonate at sort of 315. Still relatively low sulfate and chloride, although a little bit more of the sulfate than the chloride. Probably not enough at those levels to make much of a difference in terms of, sulfate to chloride ratio, and a slightly higher amount of calcium as well at 120. So you can see there that, obviously taking up sort of the production of stout and darker beers in Dublin was naturally sort of favoured by the brewing water they had available to them. Again, we mentioned when we were sort of doing the planning episode, there was other reasons behind beer production going to Dublin.
Yeah,
so yeah, what were you saying about that, Andy?
I'm sure that it was like during the war or something? There was like less taxation in Ireland and stuff around brewing and malts and stuff, and that's why it was cheaper for them to produce, and that's how I think Guinness kind of took off.
I think there might have been some stuff in terms of the kind of barley they were using as well. So I'm not sure if I'm right on this, but something to do with like roasted barley or something, and that they started using it in Dublin with Guinness or whatever before that was a thing that was going on over here. But yeah, so but anyway, the general gist is like, obviously it's not purely down to the water. That's not the only thing that's deciding things here, but they decide to move production of stout to Dublin and go, oh, actually our water works really well for this, and then you end up with obviously the most successful producer of sort of stout ever. So
yeah, exactly.
It's kind of all things kind of coming together there to help it out, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. What was the one? I had a wee example. Was that I looked? If you tried to brew it a wee heavy in Pilsen, so low alkalinity water, the dark malts would drive the pH so low the beer would taste thin and tart. So, yeah, it's quite interesting that because for bicarb, I think that's something I probably need to do a little bit more, maybe, with my darker beers, is making sure I'm actually adding in a bit of bicarbonate of soda, because it's something I've probably just ignored, and it would explain why the Siren beer I did was really nice, and it's got a nice body to it as well, because I did add the bicarb in. So
yeah, and sometimes obviously we sort of think, oh, getting the pH down is a good thing, but obviously you can go too far with that. And also for darker beers, most of the thoughts on that is generally you're kind of better off towards the higher end of the mash pH range, rather than being down at lager's good down at 5.2, but darker beers you maybe want to be sort of 5.4 or even slightly above that is probably a better place to be. So yeah, it's tempting, isn't it, when you've got the soft water or you're using RO to go, oh look, I don't really need to add any acid to this, so I'll just crack on, and the pH might end up a bit lower, but that should be fine. But for darker beers, yeah, maybe you want to be going, actually, let's try and keep it towards the
Yeah.
top end of that range, sort of thing.
Would you use just filtered water? That would you just use like
Well,
at
quite
home
often
when
when
you're
I've
doing dark
done
beers?
darker beers, I'll end up doing because obviously the tap water is quite good for brewing dark beer here as
Yeah,
it is. Um, but I'll quite often do like a sort of 50-50, you know,
yeah, yeah.
split, cut it
Just
with
to
that, and then
thin it
I'll
a
end
bit.
up with a nice amount of bicarbonate. The water's
Mm-hmm.
not too hard with the other minerals as well. And it will tend to then just fall into a nice pH range without me having to add anything else. So if I can basically manage the water profile and the pH just by watering down the tap water, that's
Yeah.
like solves all the problems and saves me hassle, putting everything into the water calculator and everything. So that would be a way that I'd approach it quite a lot for darker
One th-
beers.
yeah, one thing to mention that I do, because I don't use RO, is I'll treat my water with is it Camden tablets? Yeah.
Yes.
So I put a Camden tablet in my HLT maybe the night before when I fill it up,
Mm-hmm.
just to get any of the chlorine out of the water as well,
Yeah.
because it's something, yeah, you have to be aware of if you're with kind of treated water from your local authority, basically.
Yeah, 100%. I think pretty much wherever you are, your water's probably going to have chlorine in it, and a lot of times nowadays it's going to be chloramine as well, which is the one that you kind of have to use Camden tablets to shift that, because it's not going to
Mm,
just
evaporate.
evaporate on its own. It will stay in the water unless you
Yeah,
use
because
Camden.
what's the kind of off flavor for chlorine? Is it like
Uh,
TCP type
yeah, the
sort of thing?
horrific TCP flavor and medicinal. American brewers call it Band-Aid flavor. I think we would
Yeah,
generally
because the
think
band-aids have
TCP
got. Yeah.
um, over here in the UK, but for me, it's like one of the worst
Doctor
and
surgery.
like most unrecoverable sort of off flavors you can get, because it's never gonna get, it's never gonna reduce or dissipate, and if anything, it can often get worse the longer you leave it, and it's just you can't
Is it
taste
the
anything
smell of
else.
hospitals?
Yeah, it's just
Basically,
disinfected.
hospital smell.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's one of those where with tap water, you might get away with it, but then the levels in the water can vary, sort of, seasonality, and when they're measuring the water and they're sort of seeing how much I don't know, contaminants or whatever are in there, they can change the amount of chlorine that's going in. So you might find it's okay one day, and then you brew another batch, and now it does taste like disinfectant, which is not great. So yeah, that's a general rule of thumb anyway, is to make sure that you are taking into account the potential for chlorine or chloramine in tap water if you are using that. So we've talked a little bit about the British Isles there, and the sort of main kind of like water profiles and how they've affected brewing and the sort of styles that are associated historically with certain regions. We're going to cross over to the continent now and talk a little bit
Yep.
about mainly kind of lager brewing, because really when we're talking about water profiles and regional brewing in the continent, we're kind of focusing on Pilsner in terms of Czech lagers, but
Oh, right.
also
Sorry.
Germany. And Germany's quite
Germany.
interesting, because obviously, very closely related in terms of beer styles, but actually, when everyone talks about lagers and water profiles, they tend to sort of associate it with, yeah, you've got to have super soft water, aka Czech brewing water. But you look at German brewing, and actually there's quite a bit of variation in terms of the type of brewing water they're using, but still obviously producing a lot of lagers and doing various different styles of lagers very successfully, and having a little bit of variation in terms of like the sort of beers that you would get in different areas of Germany, perhaps being influenced by that, at least historically speaking. So yeah, what's Pilsen water all about, Andy? What does everyone associate
What do they
with?
call it? What the blank canvas? I think that's what Redeem keeps banging on about. It's like it's like a clean slate,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's almost like RO, to be honest. It's very, very low
It might as
kind of
well be
mineral.
RO, right? It's single figures, I
Yeah,
think, for most of the
it's like similar
stuff
to
in
what
there.
I get. It's basically, yeah, it's very similar to what I get here.
All
It's
right, stop
like
bragging, Andy. We all know you've got great water and tap.
no, but obviously you need to treat it for the chlorine, but it
Yeah,
is super soft.
yeah.
So
Brewing water is literally single figures for everything, apart from bicarbonate, but that's still only 16. So it's it's so low that it's virtually not even worth like putting that into a calculator.
because it's what's it actually going to do? Not much. So you
Yeah.
tend to you can build off that, but what we found was with Budvar, sorry, they tend to just go with that. So that's what they're, that
Mm-hmm.
nothing is added, which seems mad. But I think we were saying earlier about the malts actually add quite a lot of nutrients and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah.
So it can be done. So yeah, basically, there's no minerals to
Yeah.
get in
So
the way.
it can affect the brewing process as well, can't it? It's you know they choose to brew a certain way. Other people might say, well, you've got to have at least this amount of calcium in there, otherwise it's not going to be as good for the yeast health. But then there's
Good
also stuff online
decoction.
you see where it says actually, perhaps some of the reasons for the use of things like decoction mashing was also
Yeah,
not just because of the malts, but
add a
actually
flavour.
also because the water and stuff meant that decoction mashing was perhaps more beneficial for some of the other factors that it brings in, like reducing pH and
Hmm.
adding more body and flavor to it that you maybe not gonna get as much, or that process might work better with the softer water. I don't know, but again,
Yeah,
it's like
but
there's so
to
many
be acid
different things
dressed,
going on,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah, because like we're talking, you've got your acid dress, and then the decoction allows them to take you
yep,
up through the different temperatures. So then it allows the pH to possibly drop. I think what was the other way you could? I don't. Is it you can? Is it the soured sort of wort as well that you can add back in? Is another way of dropping your pH. Is
yeah.
there's all sorts of tricks, yeah, but
I've forgotten the word for that now, but
sour
that's
sauerkraut.
sauerkraut is the cabbage.
Yeah, it's a kraut. I was
Sour
it's
goots or
like
something like
that or
that.
something like that. So
Yeah, I think it
yeah,
might be sour guts or sour goots. I
so,
don't know.
yeah, which is
Um, yeah. So obviously you check lager is associated with that super soft kind of Pilsen water,
hmm
allowing all that sort of subtlety from the noble hops to come through, and the malt flavor, and just very soft on the palate. Um, you know, lovely kind of nuanced sort of lager flavor, hops and malts in balance, and so on and so forth. As we alluded to leading into this, Germany is obviously very closely associated in terms of like pale lagers. You've got your Pilsners, you've got your Hells, but also a sort of range of other kind of beers as well. But not necessarily all soft water. So
correct.
um,
Yeah,
what do they kind of have in Munich, Andy,
yeah.
in
So
terms of
Munich's
water?
is it's similar to London. It's if we got the water profile actually, form yeah we do. So Munich's got a higher bicarb of 150. The calcium's about 75, but then the rest is relatively low. Your magnesium's at 18, but then was it your sulfates at 10, your chlorides at 2? So it just has that kind
Hmm.
of quite a big bicarbonate that they need to overcome. Basically, is yeah, where that's sitting. Yeah.
And actually, when again, if we sort of talk historically speaking, um, original kind of fest beers and stuff like that were darker lagers. So,
Dark.
you've actually got Merzens and things like that being the beers that were brewed originally. So all of
Almost.
the stuff that we're talking about, I think we've obviously got to treat it with the caveat that as time goes on, the understanding of water and water chemistry and actually being able to
Yes.
alter the water is changing all the time, and people are realizing, okay, actually, if I start using, in the case of Germany, sour malt and things like that, or other techniques, we can reduce the pH even if we've got higher bicarbonate in there, and maybe
Hmm.
then brew a pale lager more successfully. So that's probably a good point just to say, like, obviously, people weren't completely oblivious to water chemistry. Even very early on, they might have ended up like boiling the water before they used it and not necessarily understanding what was happening, but perhaps they were, coming across methods like that where they would be precipitating out the hardness from the water by boiling it beforehand, and then they're actually going, oh, we can actually make a lighter beer more successfully now without necessarily understanding the science behind it. So again, as we've sort of talked about a little bit before, not everyone was going to be using the same water to begin with. Some people might be treating the water in certain ways, even historically, before they understood the chemistry behind it. Not everyone in Munich is probably drawing water from exactly the same source either. So some of those breweries might have,
Dug
have
their
their
own
own
well, sort
well
of
or their
thing.
own spring,
Yeah.
or whatever it might be. So, um, yeah, obviously this information is quite useful in certain senses, but it's also not a like every single Munich beer had to use this specific water profile, or didn't do anything to the water to begin with. But yeah, so it's a bit of a moving target, basically, isn't it? I think is probably the
Yeah,
best
yeah,
way
yeah.
to sum it up.
Yep. And the other one, who was it? Dortmund, is it? It's the other one, isn't it? The That's quite an
Yeah,
interesting one.
yeah, and I mean, it's probably another example here of kind of like actually using this information to help you with kind of brewing certain styles of beer. I mean, Andy, you've already said that you do look at like the Edinburgh water profile and kind of sometimes use that as a basis for what you might target for your brewing.
Yep.
Have you ever targeted any other, or sort of used other regional profiles as a guide for how you're going to adjust your water at all?
No.
No. Which is fine, and that's again something we'll talk a bit more about in a bit. But I am pretty much the same. Like I don't really sort of like look at these regional profiles and go, I'm going to try and make the water exactly like
Yeah,
this.
that area.
But having said that, the Smells Lagery recipe, which is a Hellas export beer, which is essentially a ex Dortmunder export beer.
Right.
So it's that style is literally the kind of Dortmund export
Did you
lager.
use the Dortmund water?
Didn't use the exact profile, but I did look at that and
Ah,
go,
similar.
okay, so actually it needs to be a little bit higher in the sulfate
Mm-hmm.
and things like
Two
that.
to
So
one.
I did use a little bit of that information to help me sort of make
Yeah,
decisions
it's
on
a
that,
scary profile then.
but it wasn't anywhere close to what the numbers are for
No,
that.
because I've got
Um,
it down here. Was it? It's like 225 calcium, which is already seems insane.
that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, but the sulfate to chloride's 120, sulfate to 60 chloride,
Okay.
which 2 to 1.
Yeah.
The bicarb
I mean, I
is
think I was something
180.
like 100 sulfate, which is still generally you'd regard that as quite high for a lager sort of profile, but it was more reflective, I guess, of what was on that Dortmund
And
profile.
do you find that works? Yeah, obviously
I
you
think so.
won
Yeah,
gold. I'm
I
sure.
think it's gives the hops a little bit more of that sort of German kind of bite and bitterness, and
Uh-huh.
I do a similar sort of thing with German pilsners as well. Like the way for me to really differentiate uh, a German pilsner to a Czech pilsner is to have a bit more mineral profile
Hmm.
in the water. Obviously, this is aside from the recipe. I would have a a more basic malt bill, so probably I might just literally just use a straight pilsner malt and very little of anything else, or maybe just 100% pilsner malt. Um, I would aim for a very sort of dry finish. I would have the bitterness probably a little bit higher as well. But after all of that, then I'm going, okay, what can I do with the water profile? I'm going to push the sulfate a little bit to try and make sure it's really dry, snappy, and has that kind of punchy bitterness that German Pilsner, to me, is different to a Czech Pilsner because the way that bitterness presents itself. And part of that would be the water profile. Having said that, you look at the BJCP guidelines for German Pilsners, and it does talk about the difference between like a southern German Pilsner might be slightly more like a Czech Pilsner because they might be using water that's a little bit more like that, whereas the northern versions tend to be very, very dry, very crisp bitterness and so on. So you get sort of regional variation within
Germany
countries themselves and so on for the same beer styles. So it's not this is the only way that you can do it, and this is how you should always make them, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Where did we end up going down that rabbit hole from? Dortmund. So
the Dortmund rabbit hole.
But yeah, so again, like we've seen it on sort of videos from various breweries and things like that. They might have their own wells and things. So I think the Munich one is kind of like there must be a lot of people using very soft water for sort of brewing hells and things like that. But then probably historically it's definitely favoured your sort of darker or amber lagers, perhaps. So I don't know. I think it's a mixed picture there, isn't it? There's lots of different.
It's just the high bicarbonate, isn't it? With Munich, it's unless you can add lots of acid, I suppose, or acidulated malt to overcome it. Basically, would be the way to do it, I suppose.
Yep.
Which I suppose that's what they would do.
Yeah, I mean they definitely developed some of those processes, didn't they?
Yeah, like the acidulated malt is a big part of German brewing and adjusting pH. Cool.
Right. So I mean, we've sort of started. We've started kind of talking a little bit about how much you might actually want to be going into mimicking or recreating historical water profiles, but on the notes we've got a little sort of note here for kind of like the historical trap. So what are some of the other issues potentially, do you think, in terms of like looking at those profiles historically speaking, Andy?
What's the pitfalls is it's maybe not perfect. It's those profiles were what they had to work with at the time without being able to adjust it. So
yeah,
they just made do with what they could brew that tasted good or okay at the time. It's maybe not ultimate gold winning medal beers or anything like that, but
yeah,
it was kind of what they could get away with at the time, I suppose.
Yeah.
I think,
no, go on.
Go. I was just gonna say, would you want to mimic 1800s London water, which was probably heavily polluted and inconsistent?
Yeah, and you got to think, like, even if these were like a snapshot of what the water profile might have been, how consistent would that have been? Like, where was all this water coming from for different places? It's not. Yeah. Like I said, it was a moving target, right? So.
And imagine you could go back, hop in your time machine and go and try those beers. You go and taste it and you're like,
yeah, Jesus.
Yeah,
why would I want to recreate that?
Yeah, more hops to offset the polluted water. Thanks.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's one of those where it's like you've got to look at it as like the information is there and can be really useful in kind of saying, okay, well, obviously that some elements of that water profile make this beer style work particularly well in that area, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best water in that area, that was the beer that worked the best, right?
Yeah, and we're seeing that today where breweries are playing about with boosting chloride and stuff that wouldn't would normally be. It's a high sulfate, it's a pale ale,
yeah,
right? And then it's all of a sudden we've got these super high chloride beers that it's just how you play with it sort of thing. You don't have to stick to those,
yeah,
you're brewing in
exactly. And
London,
you
have to
wouldn't
brew.
really. I mean, I don't think you generally tend to see like naturally occurring water with super high chloride levels in it. I guess unless it's like going through loads of salt or something like that, but then you're probably going to it'd be so brackish that you wouldn't be able to use it anyway, I would imagine. So you don't have anywhere that would have their regional style would have been a NEPA until you were able to adjust water, right? Because it wouldn't have been a thing to go, oh yeah, look, we can do this. But
so what was it go? Is it goes? What's it goes? Is that not got high salt? Salty. Right?
yeah, but I mean that's through just adding salt. I think in the brewing rather than I think so. That's a good question actually. Is that a style that was
that historical
salty because of the actual water source?
Yeah.
Good question. I'm definitely not expert enough in
anyone in the
goes a brewing to know the answer to that one. But if anyone in the chat has any insight, let us know.
Yep, exactly.
Got Slow RVR from Ottawa, Canada, who's catching us live for the first time.
That's cool.
How you doing, mate? Good to have you live on the listening in. So always cool to see some international listeners and viewers tuning in.
So
yeah. So
should we discuss building from scratch?
Yeah. So that's kind of the beauty now, isn't it, of where we're at right now?
Yeah. So you can basically you can buy an RO kit, which is reverse osmosis, which effectively strips out all the minerals using various filters like carbon. There's like what's it the resins and stuff like that, which is what's it? How many stages? Like 5 stages or something. You can get various different and how many.
Yeah. The obviously the more money you spend on it, generally the more stages you tend to have, and the larger the capacity of it. But the reverse of osmosis stage is normally preceded by like a carbon filter. Yeah. And then you'll have like a resin filter on the end of it as well sometimes.
Is that a homebrewing thing, really?
What? RO filters?
RO, yeah. Because when we speak to breweries, they tend to send it with what they've got. They tend to work with what they've got.
I think I would say the majority do, yeah. The majority.
Who was it we were speaking to? And they were saying basically when they came back from COVID, they had an infection because all they did was they put it through a carbon filter. So they would do a carbon filter, but because it had been sat in the carbon filter, there was some sort of bacteria or something that had built up in the
water had
gone
stagnant or whatever in the filter, yeah.
And it was causing issues.
Can't remember who said that, but it rings a bell.
Yeah. I don't know, was it Unity maybe? I can't remember at the time.
Not sure. But it's a good point, isn't it? Like a lot of breweries are not going to be going, especially smaller scale ones, are not going to be going, we're going to pay out for a fucking industrial scale RO filter system. Yeah, so they kind of have to work with the water that they've got. And I think that's before we sort of launch off into going everyone should have an RO filter, it's like work with the water that you've got. I mean my local water is kind of like you're blessed with water where you can effectively treat it almost like RO and build from scratch with that. My water here is not brilliant straight out of the tap. unless you are brewing kind of like, as I said before,
Dark.
it's kind of like a London style water profile, probably a little bit, a
Yeah,
little
'cause
bit
you're like
harder even than that.
north. You're just north of London, aren't you? Sort
Yeah,
of.
well, we're sort of on the edge of what would be considered East Anglia, so
Uh-huh.
it's all very flat. The water is all going through sedimentary kind of rock,
Mm-hmm.
very slow moving. It's not running off any sort of hills or mountains nearby and getting anywhere quickly. So very high, very high bicarbonate. But actually, let me just I'll just bring up Brewfather that's got my sort of water profile. Now, admittedly, I do have an RO system. I pretty much exclusively use sort of RO water and build up from scratch nowadays. But the base water itself, as long as you deal with the actual pH of it, it's not bad water. I don't sort of believe in the idea of kind of like bad brewing water as such. I don't, unless you've got a really weird kind of like water source where it's like quite high in some, well, even then,
ones that switch. They switch.
I mean that would be really frustrating, wouldn't it, if you were in that situation where you didn't know which version of it you were getting. But
but in the winter, switch to winter, and then it's
that would be a pain in the ass, to be honest. But
I've heard of that. I have heard.
No,
of
yeah,
that,
it's definitely a thing for certain people. I don't think it's quite as common as some people think it might be. But hang on, I'm trying to find the thing that can let me change. Oh, right, here we go.
You try to get on a Brewfather.
Yeah, so Bedford water is about 120 calcium.
Wow.
This was the last time I checked anyway. Haven't looked at the water report for quite a while. Sodium's 42, sulfate just under 100, chloride just under 70, and the bit that most people go makes it a bit difficult to work with is the bicarbonate is up at 230.
Wow.
So it's yeah, you can make a good porter with that or a stout straight out the tap, but for anything pale,
dark lagers,
they can work.
Saying that,
it's good. It's basically it's going to push the pH pretty high if you don't do anything with it. But my point about sort of saying there's not really, to me anyway, unless your water is almost so unbalanced that it's kind of on the point of being, not really fit for drinking water or having something else weird going on with it. To me, there's not really such a thing as kind of bad brewing water. It's just you might have to deal with it in certain ways. It's like, my water is not ideal for making pale ales and lagers straight out of the tap, but as long as I know how to deal with the pH and neutralize that bicarbonate, actually the rest of the profile is a fairly decent, like balanced water profile that you can use as a good general purpose brewing water. It's not, it's a fairly even level of chloride and sulfate, decent amount of calcium in there, which is pretty beneficial for most brewing. So
pale ales,
it's not super soft, but a bit of acid, and you can use it straight as it is for pale ales, and you get perfectly decent,
biggest problem for
balanced water profile.
Just lagers, I suppose, if you're wanting to do any sort of check or
exactly. It's not, if you want a super soft, water profile for doing pale lagers, then it's not great for that. But having said that, again, if you take the bicarbonate out of the equation, the numbers there are not far off what I would use for the Smells Lagery recipe anyway when I'm building it up from RO. So, I think it's just to illustrate the point that, like, you wouldn't look at that and go, you could make a good lager with that. But actually, as long as you know how to work with acid and whatever, you can adapt that and find a style that maybe fits the water profile quite well and work with that. So, and again, from what we said at the beginning, it's not, I think we can sort of overplay the importance of, yes, water is very important, but to me, it's like the pH is more important than the water profile itself, right? That's kind of like the key thing that we need to address first of all. And then the water profile after that is kind of like it's the way to sort of emphasize certain flavors or add a little bit of polish to it, but it's not the thing that's going to kind of like make or break the beer as much as some people might say. I don't know what you think about that, Andy. How do you feel about it in terms of like where it is in terms of the hierarchy of like importance for
your water,
the beer, the profile of the water as opposed to, you know, like obviously the pH. I would sort of think of the pH as one thing, right? That's priority number one for me for brewing. Like you got to get your pH right, and then the water profile is kind of like a little bit more down the pecking order in terms of importance. It's like, yes, it can shape the flavor of the beer quite a bit, but it's not maybe the thing that's,
I don't know.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
I don't know, because I would say at our level now in our brewing career now, like brewing career, but our brewing journey now, I feel like water's now, you want to get your water where you want it, because
oh no, I hear what you're saying. Like you'll get to a certain point where it's like, okay, I've got everything else nailed down. Now it's time to look at the water profiles. But that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's like you sort of get the process down, you get the recipe down, you get, you know, fermentation down, you get your pH down in terms of water profile. You make sure you've got everything else nailed on, and then it's like, okay, what's the top sort of 5% changes?
I think water and pH is just, they're intertwined as well.
Sort of, yeah, to a certain extent, but you can get your pH where you want it without even changing your water profile. Do you see what I mean? Like, you could get your pH to a perfect like level for brewing a lager, but then do nothing in terms of changing your water profile.
Yeah, but then does it? Say you don't, and you're doing, like for me, it's like you're doing something dark in Scotland. Then it's just going to be kind of really acidic and thin, basically, and that's not going to.
But you would be controlling the pH by adding bicarbonate to it, but you're not necessarily worrying about.
That's back in, but that's water profile, you know.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about like the whole thing in terms of like, am I worrying about sulfate to chloride ratio and all the rest of it?
Yeah. If you, I don't know, because when one of the things I've learned is with my lagers, I really like malty lagers now. I don't like the super high bitterness or super like sharp. I actually really like malty lagers where I can get like loads of bready notes and stuff like that. So that's when I'm targeting that high chloride on my lagers. And then it's like, this is amazing, you know?
Yeah.
It's really, really enjoyable.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not like I'm abandoning water profiling at all. I think it's just
it's like the age old.
It's like the icing on the cake for me. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like
I think
there's more important things to look at first, and then you get to that.
Brewing software these days, it's like you use Brewfather, you plug it in, you tell it what your water is, and you go auto. Right, I've got these salts auto, and it goes right. Put 5 grams of gypsum in. You know, it's like it does all this stuff for you. It's like it's not hard. It's
well, that's
it's not like you're using spreadsheets. From
that's
like
that's a fair point as well. It's kind of like it's not actually like it has to be a. If you're dealing with pH, you might as well be dealing with the water profile as well, right? So it's kind of like, I guess most people are not going to start doing that, but then go, "Oh, I'm too scared to do the water profiling now," because you probably got all the stuff to deal with that anyway. I don't know. I might have just like started a whole argument over nothing there, but
no. But then whatever. Folks in the chat are talking about it's hilarious because everyone's talking then about Budvar not putting anything, and it's like,
well, yeah. I mean, that's
Budvar just sends it straight with no minerals.
I guess that's the extreme end of it, isn't it?
No, but we talked about. We think that the decoctions where it's coming from, then, and there's a secret sort of. Something secret's coming out of decoction.
Well, that's what I was. Yeah, that's what I was kind of alluding to earlier. I feel like, okay, so maybe if you just shoot straight with soft water and do nothing else, then perhaps that decoction step is now a much more important part of the process. That it wouldn't work if they weren't doing that. So
yeah,
I don't know.
If you just do a single infusion mash, brewing a lager, you know.
I mean, it's not like these things are not interconnected, right? It's all obviously having an impact. So
how's your lager tasting? You know, if you just do single infusion with super low mineral water.
Yeah, and if the pH is then ending up too high or whatever, because I mean even Radim has said like with the decoction it is going to lower the pH as well, isn't it? So it's like that could be quite important when you're then not adding any acids or other minerals to the water.
There's scale as well, but I don't know. You could easily add in minerals these days anyway. So, but that's what they've done, and it works.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a great lager. Jeez.
I'm drinking Budvar now, actually. Funny enough, because I didn't do the pod when he was on, because I wasn't. I was a bit under the weather.
So you've got loads of Budvar and
so I've got Budvar in the fridge. I was like, well, I'm gonna catch up on that.
I think I got 3 bottles of it and spanked a lot that night. It was so good.
To be honest, every time I thought pour, I was oh fuck, this is such a good beer. Like, I just forget how good it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we've been talking about sort of how useful the historical profiles are, and I've been referencing the Brewing Water spreadsheet, which was put together by Martin Brungard. I hope I'm saying his name correctly, but he's a pretty well-known kind of home brewing water chemistry sort of consultant, and I'm not sure if he's a professional brewer himself, but he certainly works with professional breweries and is very well known in sort of home brewing circles as well, contributing to various books and things like that as well, and so on and so forth, and obviously being the author of the sort of spreadsheet, which I think is used probably used a lot by the people who design like software like Brewfather. I imagine they probably take a lot of the sort of workings and calculations from sort of spreadsheets like this and utilize them. But anyway, so his spreadsheet is like the original sort of Bible of water chemistry or whatever. And
did you use that?
I used it a bit, and it's what I'll be honest. It's like it's really like so in depth if you want to sort of get a proper idea of exactly what's going on and how all the different things affect
PhD.
the water chemistry and pH and everything. But it's like it's so in depth that it's a bit of a struggle to actually like enter all that information every time you're brewing with it. And basically once you have Brewfather and it's obviously doing that mainly for you, and you just sort of have to click a few buttons and then you're pretty much there. The amount of time that it takes to use that, if you're super into it and you really want to get heavily into water chemistry, then it's still worthwhile looking at. But yeah, it's a bit heavy going. But anyway, so I did use it a bit, and it does give you like the full kind of lowdown on exactly what's going on. So anyway, so he's a guy that sort of the magic wand of Brewfather for the win, Liam, definitely. So Martin Brungard is clearly a guy that knows his stuff when it comes to water chemistry, and he's got a lot of insight in terms of home brewing. And his sort of core position is basically that your water profiles are not really there, or historical city water profiles. So it shouldn't be treated as like a target for like, I'm brewing a stout, so I've got to use the Dublin water profile, or I'm doing this particular style, so I've got to have exactly the same. his perspective, and I think hopefully what I think we've been getting towards between the two of us while discussing it is that because I tend to agree with this, I think Andy probably does too. That really we're looking at these as kind of like starting points for understanding and like context of why it works with certain beers, rather than looking at it as we've got to try and replicate that.
Yeah.
So his general take seems to be kind of like focus on what the beer you're making needs in terms of water, rather than what you think the water would have been like in the city where it came from. You know, you can look at that and use it as a useful source of like information and background knowledge, but it's not necessarily the be all and end all. He also talks a little bit about again why those historical processes those historical profiles might be a bit misleading. This comes back a little bit to what you were talking about before, Andy. So
like
what else is there related to that they talk about?
Like the DWS and stuff we were talking about. So did they treat it, or did they run it through their own filters? You know, did they create their own big? Like I can imagine some of the big breweries creating filters like sand, like putting it through sort of like filtering. Because if you're just pulling out a well, then you might want to put it through some sort of sand or rocks and some sort of filtration system, you know, in the early days or whatever. That would try.
You know, who's to say that they didn't have a sort of rudimentary version of a charcoal filter or whatever, where they're literally pouring it through, you know, bags of charcoal or something. Who knows?
And I'm sure that was probably the whole secret sauce thing that they had, you know, where that was their specific water, and that was like a safely guarded secret in the engineering.
Well, exactly. If that was the thing you were doing that set you apart and made your beer better, you wouldn't be telling everybody about it, would you? So
no
it's
chance, exactly. And you know how secretive breweries are sometimes. It's like, geez. Yeah. Although in the end, I find it's just it's some of the most simplest things, you know, like it's, you think everything's dead complex, and then it's like, no, we just take it straight off. And just and run with it, sort of thing. But like we were saying earlier about the boiled water, you could just boil it off, sort of thing, to try and get rid of those minerals. Or
I mean, coming back to the brewing water briefly, it's quite interesting because it actually has a boiled version of quite a few of the city water profiles. So it's like, what would Dublin water look like after it's been, you know, I don't know what the boil time is, but
just now,
presumably, I've got it here now. So the Dublin water is like, is that Dublin I've got? Hang on, let me just quickly check. So I don't know how long they're assuming it would have been boiled for, but for Dublin, it drops the calcium right down to 43 from like what was over 100, and the bicarbonate is down to 80 from like 300 something. So
that's massive.
You know, that's a radical difference. If that, you know, if anyone there was doing that, Munich, similar sort of thing. Calcium, like, in fact, for Munich, it takes all of the other numbers down to almost like Pilsen levels, apart from the bicarbonate that's still up around about 100. But
so
again, then they might have been doing acid sort of additions or something as well as that. So
well, you can imagine. So if you're doing dark beers, you would just send it with the water that you've got. But then if you're doing like a pale beer, then you would maybe boil
exactly that, and that might have been something that they've just developed over time, and they've gone, oh, it seems like this works much better if we boil the liquor beforehand.
The liquor.
They'd have a pretty nicely lime scaled HLT at the end of it, but you know,
it's taken out of the water. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I suppose that's a point. Yeah, so that's evidence of the minerals dropping out. So like your kettle down south.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is, because it's precipitating the bicarbonate into essentially, you know, lime on the inside of the kettle. So we can all see that happening.
There you go. I've learned something today. I knew if you boiled it, but just Yeah, no, it's actually an eye opener. But it was that it's you saying those numbers actually are like half in the the
Yeah, no, I
PPMs
mean, like I
is
said,
that's
I don't
huge.
know what the boil time or how whatever has to be to achieve that, but it's a pretty dramatic drop off, isn't it?
Yeah.
I didn't realize it could have that much of an impact either. To be honest, I'd not actually looked at the numbers for that before, but just occurred to me when we were reading it there. I was like, oh
There
yeah,
you
it's got
go.
boiled profile, so we'll have a look
You
at
can
that.
just
But
bin your RO and just start boiling
well,
you set your
then you look
HLT
at
to boil the night
then you
before.
look at the electricity costs and go, maybe not.
No, it's cheaper to
I
just run it
don't
through
really need to be boiling the water for an extra hour when it's 3K of electricity going for the whole time.
do you pump your water through your RO?
Yeah. So originally I had a fairly small three stage system, and
Uh-huh.
then that would take like the best part of a day
Yeah.
to collect a brew's worth. So that was okay, but I'd
Yeah.
quite often set it up overnight and let it run, and a few occasions where I'd forgotten that it was running and had
You'd
overflowing
overflow.
vessels and water all over the garage or the
Need to
sheds.
stopcock the ball cock thing in it.
Yeah, I should, if I'd got round to actually setting something like that up, it would have been an easy solution. But in the end, I was just like, actually, I don't really. I'd like to be able to decide I'm going to brew and have enough water to brew within an
Two
hour,
hours later. Yeah.
or two. And so I've got a much bigger sort of pump system, and it basically does like a litre a minute, pretty much. So
Nice.
it's like, yeah, nice, done. And if the alarm's only like 20 minutes, half an hour, then I'm a bit less likely to forget about it and wander off somewhere else. So yeah, the pump systems can make a massive difference in how quickly they work. RO systems are difficult if you. It's not. It's probably like
nothing.
a tiny little, 50-watt pump or something. So nothing much. But yeah, the RO systems, if you've got a larger capacity pumped version, it can make a massive difference to the amount of output you get from it.
Mm-hmm.
Water pressure is quite important with those as well, especially if you've got one of the ones that isn't pumped. If you've got low water pressure, you're going to be struggling with those too. So yeah. Anyway, coming back to Mr. Brungard's take on it, in terms of sort of like the impact on beer styles, he sort of frames the narrative as water was actually really more like a limiting factor or a kind of like a constraint on beer. So it wasn't like they were using that to choose what beer they were going to make. It just by process of elimination, they're kind of going, okay, this beer works, this beer doesn't do so well. Trying to make our lager in London or whatever is not successful at the minute, and therefore you end up sort of getting like railroaded into, okay, well, we're making porters because that's the one that's coming out well, and so on. So basically they're adapted their recipes to work with the water, not because they went, oh, this water's really good for making a certain style. And again, he sort of basically says that mash pH is the thing that you want to focus on. If you get that right, your enzymes are gonna work well. You're gonna get good flavor extraction, and then you can look at your flavor balance in terms of the ions, so your sulfates and chlorides and all the rest of it. But generally speaking, and I think again this is something that I tend to follow. I don't tend to go to the extremes when it comes to like sulfate or chloride or any other minerals. It's kind of like keep it within reasonable ranges, avoid chasing exact ppm numbers from historical profiles. So coming back to the Burton one, I guess he's sort of saying, maybe looking to try and achieve 600 ppm on your sulfate is not necessarily a great idea.
Yeah.
Not to say like you shouldn't ever do it. Like I'm all for people experimenting and see what happens. Probably something that Bagley's might have done already if he's not done it already. But yeah, I think we were talking about it before. People saying that you can you can get to a certain level of gypsum where you're adding, and it starts to make the water taste a little bit like plasterboard or whatever, because gypsum literally is like the taste
Just
of plaster,
plasterboard.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Plasterboard, brilliant.
So yeah. Any other thoughts in terms of how you sort of go about sort of using that in terms of designing beer or water profiles, Andy?
No, it's just you. Are we talking? Did we talk about the sulfated chloride or?
Yeah. Well, briefly. If you think we should say a bit more about that.
No, just what were you talking about the Brungard?
Yeah.
Not sure. Where you want to go?
Okay.
Question.
So I mean, just following on from what we were saying previously, as far as the historical profiles are like a guideline, rather than something to target necessarily.
Yep.
Mr. Brungard sort of basically says, look at the
beer
you're brewing first of all.
Well, that's what we're saying about, like, when we get profiles from other breweries and stuff, or we have breweries on for chats, and then you find out the water profile, and you're like, oh, that just goes against everything that I was ever taught about, pale ales or something. You've totally spun that in the head, or lagers, where we had was it the Cartridge Brewing profile, where it was like chloride heavy on a lager, and it was just like, well, that's not what you're meant to do. And it's like, no, but it really works.
And I don't think we'd ever seen anyone say that before, had we? Either.
No.
That was like, which is like you say, that's why it felt like it was like, oh, that's going against the
what we've been taught. And then,
but I mean, it's I guess that's kind of the point, isn't it? It's like Budvar are doing stuff one way with like no minerals, make great beer.
That goes totally against everything.
I think we've both brewed lagers using Adam Makes Beers.
Oh, it's insane
method of boosting the chloride up.
Like that
works great. Works
tap.
Great for multi beers, lagers, specifically.
Yeah, that kind of like super malty German lager type thing. Yeah. It's just like, holy shit, that's addictive. Like,
so there's obviously more than one way to approach these things.
Yeah, the other cool. I mean, like the new book, the Modern Homebrew book. Like,
yeah,
they give you loads of water profiles in this as well, like what you should be targeting, which is really cool. And that might open your eyes as well to different what breweries are doing, because it is the kind of it's the kind of the slight, maybe when you're trying to push your brewing to that sort of next level. Why am I not winning medals? Then is it because you're not adding bicarb into your dark beers? Or
I think it's a massive part of it is also, going. It's not about just copying what someone else is doing or a certain place is like. It's like you're aiming to fit it to your brewing process and system, and whether you're using RO water or using tap water to what you're starting with, because everyone's end result is going to be a little bit different. So my NEPA might need a bit more chloride in it because I'm getting a bit more bitterness extracted from the hops, and I want to take the edge off of that. Whereas you might be brewing it and like you're getting really nice soft bitterness already, so you don't have to push the chloride as high. Do you know what I mean? Like it's
because the kits, because your kits are all so different. Like that was an eye opener.
Your dry hopping process might be a little bit different. So even after the fact, you might find that that's going to have an impact as well. So it's all No,
or
like we said, there's so many dials that are being
how much
turned. It's
pressure the fermenter's under. Like if you've
yeah,
got very low pressure, or say like you're like, oh, you're using a spunding valve, but it's all the way open, but that's still got like a psi of pressure, right?
mm-hmm.
Which some yeast like Yorkshire Ale yeast say, or any of these kind of real ale, maybe like they love like having a big, like a big head on the krausen, and but a bit of pressure just kills that down, and that's why the Yorkshire Square just like it makes such a difference having yeah, just your kit. So how
No,
do you
exactly.
then change with your water profile? I don't know, but like I think
So
it's a total
we've
different.
spent 2 hours saying there's no like clear guidance on any of this. Just have to go out and figure it out for yourself.
No,
Hope
but
that's been
it's
helpful for everyone. Cheers. So we'll see you on the next episode.
No, but like I definitely think water profiles one. If you're not doing your water profile, I mean, yeah, start looking at it now. And use like if it's such a big thing, use Brewfather or
Yeah.
Beersmith. Both have got great bits of kit with the background.
Yep.
And you can go online and check out your water profile to see if you've got a hard water or soft
Yeah.
water.
I think that's probably the starting point, isn't it, for anyone? It's like, even if you don't want to be like buying extra stuff so that you can adjust the water profile or do whatever.
It's pennies.
No, I mean,
I would definitely go buy gypsum, go buy calcium chloride, go buy.
No, you definitely should.
Salt.
But I guess
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, like, if you don't want to do that, like even as the starting point is, at least be aware of what your water profile is.
Boil it for
so
an
you
hour
can
before you brew.
and then you can go, okay, well look, my water profile is leaning towards probably favoring darker beers, or it's maybe something that's going to work better with pale beers. So at least you know like where you're starting from, and you can go, okay, what
I think it's going to be the gaps we're not doing. So you probably find a lot of listeners are good, experienced brewers, done quite a lot of brewing, but it's like the gaps. Where's the gaps? Oh, I've not used Epsom salts. I've not used bicarbonate. It's like these little gaps, or I'm not treating my sparge water with that, with acid and stuff like that. There might be little things that just there's wee aha moments out there. I think.
Yeah.
For me, it's bicarb. Like I literally was like, oh, why would I want to add bicarbonate into my beer? But it's like, no, you do it for dark beers. It's great for getting like, if your pH is going down to 5 or something, or even just you don't want it to be 5.2, you maybe want it higher so your beer's not got that tart thin sort of thing, because you might find that if you're in a soft water area, you're like, oh, my dark beers are kind of like alright, they're drinkable, but they're not dead creamy and like full mouthfeel sort of thing. And maybe it's just you need to add bicarbonate of soda to get that away from that sort of what it's describing there. So there's maybe little gaps in what you use, and
there's definitely nuances in it, isn't there?
Water salts, but not all of them.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Like I said, I would encourage everyone to try and get involved in it. It's just that feels like it's an area of some people where it's like they're reluctant to get into water chemistry because it feels like it's more complicated than it actually is.
Just use Brewfather, man. It's just...
To be fair, Brewfather makes it so much easier. Like when I first started playing around with it,
it was a spreadsheet.
It was like the spreadsheet, and there was a couple of websites, but there was like it was all so different and like weird in terms of how you would put the information in, that it was like I didn't really know which ones to believe or which ones were going to give me the right information. It was a pain in the arse actually like entering it all in to begin with. Didn't really necessarily have the equipment to even like figure it out properly either, in terms of like pH and everything like that as well. So but yeah, now it's like it's so easy to get into it that actually I think that barrier in terms of knowing what to do.
Yeah, it's what water profile do I want? for my beer.
Brewfather can basically tell you what to do. Like if you just click the right buttons on there, it'll sort that all out for you. So
because we don't tend to do brews back to back and then compare the water profile, do we?
No. And that's yeah, that's definitely something where probably the level of like experimentation and like testing is pretty low, I guess, in the most sort of home brewers cases, I would think.
Yeah. I know Baggers has done it. He did a short and it was really cool, and it was like Lord Chloride to Sulfate or something like that, and and he could taste the difference between the two, and it was like quite minimal, but there was a difference sort of thing.
Yeah. Speaking of Mr. Bagley, he's just put an interesting point. Yeah, in the chat there. What's your view about adding bicarbonate and or chalk to the water and then adding acid to the mash? Seems pointless as one cancels the other out, and I totally agree basically with this, which is essentially why I won't. And again, this comes back to...
No, I think it depends on your base water, because if you're me, then I think it's like, it actually is a big point, because you're coming from where my bicarbonate is 30, right?
Yeah.
So if I brew a dark beer, it's like your pH is crazy low.
No, that makes sense. I think what Rich is getting at is like if you follow a set profile for like a style. So let's say for in Brewfather, you go, I'm brewing this beer, and it says that I have to have 100 bicarbonate, right? So you might be adding bicarbonate in to hit the profile, but then to get the pH where you want it to be, you might then be adding acid to kind of counteract the bicarbonate.
No.
Well, you will in some cases, because sometimes you'll put that into the recipe and it will turn out that actually the pH is then still too high.
But the only time I'd be adding bicarb is for darker beers, I think.
No, for you, yes, but I'm just talking like in terms of like if you're going by a water profile that say Brewfather says.
So say your RO like you, right?
Yeah. So if you're doing it could be if you're adapting your own tap water as well, though. To be fair, but like just to let me see if I can find an example. Generally speaking, no.
Do you add bicarb to your water? So you've got zero bicarb.
Very rarely, but like I said, sometimes I'll cut the tap water with RO rather than adding bicarbonate to it. So some of the water profiles in, I mean, this is probably more relevant if you are targeting like a city water profile, but let's say you decided, I'm going to
wait to see that bicarb will be the next big thing.
Well, here's a good example. So like Vienna, so if you were going, I'm going to make a Vienna lager, and the Vienna water profile says that I should have 225 bicarbonate in there.
Yeah.
If you were then going to recreate that, regional profile, right? I think Baggers is basically saying exactly that at the minute. You'd be adding a load of bicarbonate in to get that number up to 225, but then you put it into the calculator and go, oh, now my pH is going to be like 5.7, 5.8. So now I've got to add acid in to basically neutralize the bicarbonate that I've just added in there. So I think all Rich is saying is like, what's the point? Because you're basically adding the acid to then drop the bicarbonate back down.
But what are you getting from bicarbonate and flavor?
Well, you're not gonna get anything if you've then neutralized it with the acid. That's the point. So you might as well just put the bicarbonate number at a level where it's going to work for the pH rather than having to do both.
Sodium in the beer.
Well, that's a separate thing, but
because you added it.
Yeah. I mean that's that's a good point. Like you would still have some sodium if you're doing it with baking soda. So good point.
But then is that just a byproduct of adding? because this is the thing. Like my brewing, I've always avoided bicarb unless
Yeah.
it's been for dark beers. So, yeah. But then, is there a flavour advantage to then putting bicarb in your beer,
Yeah.
or do you just roll with it? I don't know.
It's a good point of conversation though, anyway, isn't it?
Because one of the things is that if you don't, then it can leave your beer being thin and acidic.
You'll have to freestyle on this for a minute or two because I've got to go for a whiz. I'm busting.
Okay, cool. It's just I don't. It's a funny thing. It's like something I've kind of started to wrestle with. It. I think bicarb is the last thing that I've had to look into and basically do, because I think for all the different water profiles or water salts and stuff, it's probably the last one that I've messed about with, to be honest, and it's an interesting one. It's definitely a good question on do you add bicarb in and then neutralize it with acid, or because you're trying to hit a target profile or what. But yeah, it's yeah, I suppose like pH and stuff like that, try to hit your various pHs. Like I think we've looked in the past at like 5.2 was the magic number, and then is it now 5.4 or 5.6, and how that all works out. So yeah, what's Brett saying? While it may seem counterproductive, this process is designed to mimic the high alkalinity, soft water profiles of historical brewing cities like London, while giving the brewer precise independent control over the final pH and water mineral content. He asked Jeeves, so that's what's Bagger saying? Yes, exactly. That when you're matching a regional profile which has bicarbonate and chalk in it, then you measure your mash pH at say 5.7, so you add acid to lower it. Brooks, what's he saying? If Brewfather tells me to add something, then I add it. I'm not smart enough to know the nuances that each edition brings. I mean, to be fair,
that's a good one to come back in.
I do like that. When I'm trying to target, so I'll put it in Brewfather, like what my part profile is, and then sometimes I'll even just tweak the salt additions as well myself, just to try and tidy things up or whatever.
I mean, I think, I guess from my perspective, and maybe what Rich was getting at there, Rich Bagley, that is that if you're adding one thing in and then just neutralizing it with the acid afterwards, is it better to just lower the amount of bicarbonate so that your pH kind of falls where you want it without then having to add the acid or add any acid at all, perhaps? I tend to lean towards that when I'm certainly when I'm designing. Like I said, I don't usually follow water profiles anyway, as far as like target guides or certainly regional water profiles, because I just don't use that. But so I don't tend to encounter this problem, because I'll sort of look at the pH and adjust the numbers for things. If I do need to add any bicarbonate, I'll add it until the pH is right, and then I don't have to add acid. Do you know what I mean? So it's like you're saying, for your water, you need the bicarbonate, but you're adding that to get the pH right for the stout, rather than
for the pH, because otherwise you're
not
4.95 on and you're like,
but you're not going, oh, I'm making a stout, so I'm going to do Dublin water profile and I'm going to put 300 ppm bicarb in, and then you go too far the other way, and then you have to add more acid in to bring it back to where it needs to be, I guess is the
I'm
the
looking
point,
at calcium, chloride and sulfate ratios is the ones I'm looking at, and maybe a bit of magnesium if I need, but I tend to look at those. But I'm just wondering if bicarb is the missing secret sauce or something, that where it's
well, I mean, I think somebody else in the chat, so please leave quietly, has said, yeah, so if you do add bicarb and then acids, you are going to end up still with more sodium in there. So there is going to be an impact in terms of the amount of sodium going up, but it's not.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you are
you
basically
could get
just
that from salt.
neutralizing
It's
it.
like-
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
You are neutralizing. Okay. So literally use it for dark beers.
Yeah.
Which I have. That's all I've done. I haven't used it. It's not like I go, oh, I'm gonna go for the Burton water profile, and then I'm like, oh, I need loads of bicarb because I'm just like sack putting all that nonsense in my beer sort of thing. Bicarbonate of soda. I'm just like, I'll go with the kind of sulfate chloride ratios, and then not worry about bicarb. So, yeah. You alright?
Yeah, no, I was just I'm tinkering with Brewfather now. I'm like going, okay, so if I did try and target a Dublin water profile, how much sodium am I going to end up with? It seems like you would end up with quite a lot.
Is that right? Just to get
yeah. So if you add bicarbonate to get your if you add baking soda to get your bicarbonate up to 300 plus from 0, so essentially if you're starting from RO, then you would end up with over 100 ppm of sodium in there. So it's definitely doing more than just affecting the pH, because obviously that sodium element is going to be doing all the things that sodium does that we've already talked about earlier on. So interesting. That's quite a interesting little point of discussion there that we've come across. I don't think we've quite fully worked that one out, but it is interesting because the
so you can add
in one way it's like, yeah, the bicarbonate itself is kind of, you might be just adding one to then have to add more acid, but you will, as a side effect, potentially be pushing up the sodium, which might be having its own effect on the flavor of the beer. So
you could add potassium bicarbonate,
but then in terms of the Dublin, like the original, or what is supposedly the original Dublin water profile, how much sodium does that actually have in it? Because it's kind of like if you were trying to emulate that, and it's actually really low in sodium, so it's
yeah.
I don't know.
I've
lost now.
Lime. Is it calcium hydroxide?
Well, yeah, you can add it with chalk, can't you?
Slate lime. Chalk's another one you can add. Calcium carbonate.
So it doesn't. Chalk. Yeah, it doesn't have to be with baking soda. It's too many chemistry words now. Losing the plot.
I'm just like, baking soda for dark beer, chalk, traditional styles, potassium bicarbonate, sodium sensitive, pickled lime, major pH adjustments.
Yeah.
Cool. There you go.
Right. Anyway, I feel like we're sort of running out of steam a little bit here, Andy. So shall we wrap things up? We're just over the 2-hour mark. Is there anything else that you feel that we need to say before we finish up here, or
are you gonna? When are you gonna do your heavy Burtonized water?
When am I gonna do it? Well, Baggers says that everyone should have a go. So FOMO and peer pressure all wrapped up in one.
Especially now you've got a cask as well, Tricky. You know what I mean?
Well, that's it. Yeah, I've got to go for the full Burton Snatch. Hand pull.
You've got to do your bodies
English
clone.
IPA or whatever.
Got to get the bodies on the go. That's it.
Cool. Yeah.
Do we have the after party Google?
Owen's literally just messaged about that. So if you want to chat for a bit, I will try and set that up.
Okay, well, I'm just thinking. See, the next episode is a. Who have we got? Is it Al? No, it's. We've got a couple of episodes lined up, haven't we? So the next one I think's gonna be the landlord or the landlord off.
Yep.
I think that's in 2 weeks. So we've all brewed landlord, some more successfully than others. So that's going to be in 2 weeks' time, and yeah, and then after that, I think we've got a guest lined up. Is it Alga Brew or something? Isn't it? I follow him on Instagram actually, but we've got that lined up just after Algae. Is it Algae Brew? Algae Brew?
Algebra. I presume it's like algebra rather than algae brew.
Algebra. Yeah, he his kit. So I followed him for quite a while actually. He's
Yeah.
but he's got like a kind of he's like a microbrewery type thing. He's probably
Yes. So I believe he's gone from home brewing to pro, but I think one of the reasons that he caught our attention was that he had a box out with Bruiser, sort of very
okay.
early on, and obviously we were like, yeah, wow, that's pretty impressive. So
yeah. So yep, he's lined up for 4 weeks after that. So 4 weeks after today. So I think we've got a few pods or a couple of pods lined up anyway. So yeah, so what's that? The next episode will be 2 weeks, so that will be the 2nd. Or are we doing the Friday? I don't even have the calendar up. It'll either be the Friday or the Saturday. I think it might be the Friday actually. It's been changed, but
yep.
We'll double check. But anyway, keep up to date on the Facebook. I'll post stuff in there, and if you're in the Discord as well, I'll put it in the chat in the Discord. Apologies for the late notice for these episodes. It's been Easter holidays and stuff like that, so I've not been on the ball getting stuff updated. Just try to keep the kids alive at the minute. So usuals.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
But yeah. But that is episode 138. Regional water profiles is in the bag. So
and there is a link for the Google Meet if anyone wants to join us for a few beers on the after party. In the chat here, I will pop it up on Discord as well for those of you who are Patreons. Speaking of which, if you do want to support the pod and get involved in the Discord channel and a few other extra benefits, then you can obviously go over and find us on Patreon as the Hop Edition podcast and sign up on there. Yeah, that's about it then, isn't it? Really? So cheers, guys. Hopefully see a few of you on Google Meets in the afters, and otherwise we'll see you on the next episode.
Cool. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody. Hello.
Didn't change his little machine thing. Just the
We're still live.
doodle.